All right, welcome our journalist, Mr. Emo Syndicate. He has traveled to Somalia today to see the pressing realities of the Soviet-dominated Somalia. Now, Somalia is a African country in the Horn of Africa, wedged between French Djibouti, which will gain independence in 1980, he tells me, and Ethiopia, one that has undergone a Marxist revolution itself. Today on E-Line or Dateline with the E as a capital, we explore the situation in Somalia and see what has become of Somalia since then. Anyway, some background history. Since 1969, Somalia has been ruled by a Marxist-Leninist dictatorship or government ruled by Mohammed Said Barre. Now, Mr. Barre has started some programs of modernization and socialism within the country. Somalia, being the first of many African countries to fall under the guise of communism, has now been communist for 8 to 9 years. Now, we go to Somalia to see the progress the Somalis have made since 1969, nice, and what they have done to do and credit socialist score and have money from the Soviets being poured in to Mogadishu and Hargeisa. Now, over to you, Mr. No Name, of course. Anyway, Somalia, on the Red Sea, borders 3 countries, which are Djibouti. Also, there is Mogadishu, Somalia. 2 years ago, it was pressing a campaign to emancipate women. The Somali government was vexed to find the conservative religious leaders preaching against the equality of the sexes and supporting their arguments with readings from the Koran. It was decided to stop this dissent. 11 of the religious leaders were rounded up, and early one morning they were executed by firing squad. 3 hours later, 2 Soviet-supplied MiGs flying above the new national monument brushed wings and went down in twin spirals of smokes and flames. There wasn't a person in Mogadishu who thought this was a coincidence, one Somali recalled. It was a sign from heaven. Allah was angry. The episode underscores the particular position in Somalia, a nation of almost 4 million people, the majority of them nomads, as it struggles to move into the modern world under the banner of both Islam and Marxism. The attempt to straddle, if not merge, the two is the most striking feature of the government of President Mohammed Said Barre, who took power from a corrupt and even fragmented civil regime in a bloodless coup 8 years ago, and has securely ruled the country since. Under his leadership, Somalia became the only non-Arabic speaking nation to join the Arab League, and also the first country in Black Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa to sign the Treaty of Friendship and Cooperation with the Soviet Union. Now, with the fighting in the Ogaden, the eastern third of Ethiopia that Somalia wants to annex, Somalia stands out among many African countries in its refusal to accept the inherited colonial boundaries and its readiness to press territorial claims against the neighboring countries. A third important force of the country's collective conscious nationalism is expressed in the version of a greater Somalia, or Somali Winne, when it would unite all of these Somali-speaking people speared through the other 3 other Horn of Africa countries, like Djibouti, the Ogaden, and the North Frontier District of Kenya. President Said Barre has often insisted that the Marx and Muhammad are not only compatible, but complementary, that the religious asceticism of Islam can combine with the concepts of mass discipline inherited in scientific socialism to forge a strong nation, will and lift the country from the ranks of the 25th poorest nation. Islam and socialism supplement each other because both advocate for the advancement of the interests of the people of mankind. Justice, dignity, prosperity, and equality has been written. At a news conference with the Western and the Arab journalists several months ago, the president was pressed on the point and responded, "There is no chapter, not even a single word in our Quran that opposes scientific socialism. We say, where is the contradiction? The contradiction was created by man only." To the outside parties closely involved in the developments of the Horn of Africa, however, The contradiction in geopolitical terms seems real indeed. Saudi Arabia, the main source of money among conservative Arab nations, contesting Soviet influence along the Red Sea, is exerting pressure among Mogadishu to break its ties with Moscow, playing upon Arab solidarity. The Soviet Union at the same time is trying to persuade Somalia to curb its nationalism in the interest of internationalism and Marxist brotherhood. If this is done, in Moscow's view, then a settlement can be reached with Ethiopia, an ancient enemy of Somalia that is largely Christian, but is now also Marxist, and a federation can perhaps be formed along the strategic Horn of Africa based upon the ideological affinities instead of religious and cultural ones. In Mogadishu, the symbols and the icons of forces pulling at the soul of the country proliferates in striking juxtaposition. In Mogadishu, the symbols and the icons of the force pulling at the soul of the country proliferates in striking juxtaposition. On every other wall are the initials of the Somali Revolutionary Socialist Party, or the SRC, or the Somali Revolutionary Council, a political structure set up a year ago on the Soviet model. Nearby are brightly painted posters depicting the victories of the Somali insurgents in the Ogaden and Djibouti, the newly independent nation with a majority of Somali-related people called the Isaacs, which Somalia also claims. Rising above the poster is a myriad of a modern $3 million mosque, a gift from Saudi Arabia. Observers who have visited both Mogadishu and Addis Ababa usually conclude that the 3 years since the overthrow of Emperor Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian revolution has brought about a more fundamental change in national life than the 8 years of the Somali revolution. The military regime in Ethiopia has undertaken a major land redistribution program, nationalized all industry, and prohibited ownership of more than one house. In Somalia, where there are only 4 factories at independence in 1960, scientific socialism is laboring to take root in a pre-industrial society. It has meant mostly the mobilization of the collective labor to build Chinese-style self-help, or North Korean self-help. Many of these projects are pretty impressive, ranging from street cleaning brigades that made Mogadishu one of the cleanest cities in Africa to construction crews in the northern city of Hagassia that were to build a new national theater and cultural complex. About 60% of the population is still nomadic or semi-nomadic and following a 1,000-year routine of driving camels from the waterhole to pastoral lands, remaining immune to the centralization control of the government in Mogadishu. Authoritarian tendencies are tempered by the individualism of the desert life, for the desert is a man's home and a woman's home. Several years ago, the government tried to restrict the throwing of cat, the narcotic weed whose daily consumption eats up at the income of most Somali wage earners. The efforts failed, because cat is much of a part of daily life. Now the government has left it to localities to limit the hours of sale and even grow cat in state-run plantations as part of the drive for self-sufficiency. Soviet diplomats here have complained privately that the country's socialism is only skin deep and that Somali's religion takes precedent. The Somalis are very devoted Muslims, a Pakistani diplomat said. Where did you get into a mosque? When you go into a mosque, it is always crowded. You see a lot of young people, and some of them are even crying while praying. Although some of the precepts of the Koran, such as the sanctity of private property, are still glossed over in the preaching, there is still a residue of conservative thinking, who shows itself in the endurance of such customs as afibrillation, a traditional operation performed among the adolescent girls that combines clitoral circumcision with the surgical equivalent of a chastity belt. Infibulation, which ensures the virginity of the prospective brides, is a form of subjugation contrary to the policy of equal rights for women, but the government appears reluctant to condemn it outright. Estimates are that 90% of teenage girls in Somalia still undergo the operation. Somalia is the country of three M's: Marxism, Muhammad, and Mad Mullah. A Western diplomat says, Somalia is a country of three M's: Marx, Muhammad, and the Mad Mullah. A Western diplomat says, using the British nickname of Sayyid Muhammad Abdullah Hassan. The Somali national leader is half a century ago. I leave it to you to decide which M is the most powerful. And that has been a nightly news broadcast from Somalia 1977. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. This has been another exciting episode of ENN, or ENSBC, or EOX News, or whatever you like to call it. Before, polarization on the news, we're talking about the Cold War and the geopolitical struggle, as all channels were tuned in to the same thing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this nightly news broadcast. I hope you enjoyed. I really hope you dig it. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time. This has been an exciting episode of me. Yeah, but just looking, I see that my mouth is more open. Wow, cool. It's the little things, guys. It's the little things. Anyway, I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed. Not a lot of mess ups, so this is a pretty straightforward video, and till next time, enjoy. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, anyway, thank you for watching, learn something, and I'll see you later, ladies, gentlemen, and NB. Goodbye, and oh yes, this is an Arab country, kinda, so Allahu Akbar. Learn something. Saya